Lesbian detective. Unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Live right now. Lesbian detective. Lesbian detective. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready to go. Pay attention to the message I present to you, the Lesbian Detectives.
This is Lesbian Detectives. I'm Sierra.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And we are here to talk about missing and unsolved murders.
We are discussing cases that you have forgotten about or never even heard of.
So sit back, relax, and let's start this podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Guys, it's been a week. I feel like I have said that a couple of weeks, but this one has been a week.
Every week.
Like,
has been a week.
True that. Because my car broke down. Yes, taking my daughter to swim class, driving on the road. My car said, you're not going nowhere. So this whole week, we've been looking for a new car for me. We finally found one. We was there for like 5 to 10 something at night. We didn't get home till 11. Then the next day, we are recording right now. And then I got to edit tonight and tomorrow to make sure this episode get out
on
time. And it will be. Please believe in me. But it's been a long weekend. So please pray for me. But my wife is going on vacation. So her weekend's turning it up a little bit because she's going to in New York.
Yes.
Lucky, I'm staying home with the kid. And I'm going to have my own fun. Hopefully. Now let's get into the episode. It was a cold winter night in the city. The kind of nights where the roads feel empty. And even the flickering street lights seem to be holding their breath. Somewhere in a working class neighborhood, 2 sisters slipped quietly out of their home. They were laughing, talking, full of life and dreams in their heart. They had plans, just ordinary plans, the kind of outing that teenagers live for. They were excited, carefree, thinking only about the next scene, the next song, the next laugh they will share. They promised their mother they'd be home before midnight. And in the winter darkness, that promise felt simple, safe, believable. But the night had other plans. By the time the world went to sleep, the roads had swallowed them. Bus stops, dimly lit corners, passing cars, everything became a blur. And when the theater emptied and the lights went down, something changed. Something unseen. Because by the time anyone realized they were missing, hours had already passed. And in the city, with all its noise, had become a place of questions. Where had they gone? Who had seen them last? And most terrifying of all, who had made sure they never returned home? Tonight, we follow their steps into the darkness. We retrace their laugh that vanished, the bus rides that led nowhere, and the city roads that held their secrets. This is a story of 2 girls, a night that should have been ordinary, and a mystery that has haunted a city for decades. This is a case of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. Before they became names in a newspaper headlines, Barbara Grimes and Patricia Grimes were 2 girls grown up in the south side of Chicago. Barbara was born on May 5th, 1947, and at the time of her disappearance, she was 15. Patricia was born on December 31st, 1943, and at the time of her disappearance, she was just 3 days away from turning 13. They lived in Brighton Park, a working class neighborhood where families look out for each other and kids walk to school, church, and even corner store without much fear. Their parents, Loretta and Joseph Grimes, divorced in 1951. Despite the separation, the children remained close to their father. Loretta carried most of the responsibility at home, raising several children while working outside the home to meet ends meet. Money was tight. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Barbara and Patricia were especially close. Family members said that they did everything together. Barbara was protective, more mature. Patricia followed her sister everywhere, eager to keep up. They shared a bedroom, shared clothes, shared secrets, and more than anything, they shared a love for Elvis Presley. By late 1956, Elvis Presley was everywhere, and Barbara and Patricia were devoted fans. They had already seen his first movie, Love Me Tender, 10 times. On the night of December 28, 1956, they asked their mother if they could see it again at Brighton Theater, about 1.5 miles from their home. Loretta agreed. At 7:30 p.m., the sisters left their house with $2.50, enough for tickets, popcorn. Barbara carried extra change just in case. They may have walked. They may have taken the bus. No one knows for sure. What is known is that they made it to the theater. A school friend, Dorothy, later told police she sat behind the sisters during the movie. When Dorothy left after the first showing, she saw Barbara and Patricia standing in line at the concession stand. They looked happy, calm, completely fine. They decided to stay for the second showing. That decision changed everything. If Barbara and Patricia stayed for the second showing at the theater, they should have been home at 11:45 p.m. By midnight, Loretta Grimes knew something wasn't right. She stood near the front of the house, listening for footsteps, watching the clock, waiting for a sound of the door opening. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavier with every passing minute. Loretta sent 2 of her children, an older sister and a brother, to the nearby bus stop. They stood there in the cold, watching headlights approach, hoping to see Barbara and Patricia step off the bus. One bus came, then another, then a third. The girls weren't on any of them. The siblings went back home and told their mother what they had seen, or rather what they hadn't seen. That's when Loretta began calling around. She called friends, neighbors, classmates, anyone she thought might have known something. Maybe the girls had gone to someone's house after the movie. Maybe they were sleeping over and forgot to call. No one had seen them. No one was expecting them. At around 2 a.m., with no other options, Loretta contacted the Chicago police and reported her daughters missing. By morning, the disappearance of 2 young sisters had captured the attention of the city. What followed was one of the largest missing person searches in Cook County history up to that point. Hundreds of officers were assigned full time. A special task force was created. Officers worked around the clock. Flyers where the girls' faces were printed and passed around in town. Police knocked on doors, questioned theater's employees, interviewed bus drivers, searched vacant buildings, alleys, railroad tracks, and forests. Rivers and canals were checked. Every lead was checked. Tips began pouring in. Someone claimed they saw the girls getting off at CTA, bus at 11:05 p.m. Two teenager boys reported seeing Barbara and Patricia around 11:30 p.m., running in and out of doorways near their home, carefree, as if nothing was wrong. For a brief moment, hope flickered. But then came another sighting. A teenager boy told police he had walked behind the two girls matching the sister descriptions. They stopped, talked to two men sitting in a dark-colored Mercury. He claimed he watched as the girls got into the car. If true, everything changed. As days passed with no sign of Barbara and Patricia, Loretta received a ransom note. One instructed her to travel to Milwaukee with $1,000. FBI agents came with her. She waited in a church, clutching the money. They didn't appear. Another note told her to leave a suitcase of money in a road station. That too led nowhere. Both notes were confirmed a hoax, cruel distraction that drained time, energy, emotional strength. The case went national. Newspapers ran their photos. Radio stations discussed theories. Strangers inserted themselves into the story. One woman claimed she had met the girls in Nashville, Tennessee, and a clerk of an agency identified them from a photograph. Loretta rejected it immediately. Her daughter had left home with $2.50. No luggage, no plans. Elvis Presley himself addressed the girls on radio and television. If you are a good Elvis fan, you go home and ease your mother worries. They didn't. Then an anonymous letter appeared, sent to an advice columnist, and the writer claimed to have seen the girls that night they disappeared. She described, and we exchanged phone numbers. When we got to the road where we turned off, we said goodbye and ran across the road. Then Betty forgot something. She had to tell Barbara, and we ran back to the corner. A man around 22 or 25 was talking to them. He pushed Barbara in the back seat of the car and Pat in the front seat. We got part of the license number as the car drove by us. The first four numbers were 2184. Betty think there were 3 or 4 numbers after that. When we heard that they were missing, we didn't know what to do. Police were unable to trace the car from this information. The letter writer was anonymous and was never identified. The letter remained one of the most chilling elements of the case, a first-hand glimpse of a horror written by someone who saw part of a crime unfold. On the night of January 14th, a classmate of Patricia received 2 phone calls to the family home. Each time, the caller asked for Sandra. But before a word could be exchanged, the line went dead. Sandra's mother later recalled the voice as frightened, tense, and almost desperate, and she couldn't shake the uneasy suspicion that it might have been Patricia herself trying to reach out. Not long after, police received an anonymous tip that sent chill through the investigation. The caller claimed the girls were already dead and would be found in a park in Lyon Township, a remote area of far west of Brighton Park. He insists this knowledge had come to him in a dream. The authority traced the call to a man named Walter. He was questioned, but after the interrogation, he was released, leading investigation with an unsettling question, the haunting sense of a warning that had already arrived too late.
By the second week of January, a heavy snow had fallen across the area, followed by a bitter, cold spell, and then a brief thaw. On January 22nd, Leonard Prescott was driving along German Church Road, a quiet, rural stretch in unincorporated Willow Springs, south of Chicago. The road cut through open land bordered by forest preserves and a shallow creek. Something flesh-colored on the side of the road caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a discarded mannequin. Uneasy, he turned around and brought his wife. Marie back to look. The sight that met them made their stomachs turn. The naked bodies of two girls were sprawled in the snow. One lay face down, the other face up, partially covering the first. Leonard called the police immediately. When officers arrived, they were met with a scene that froze them in place. Behind the guardrail, partially hidden by the snow, lay the naked bodies of two young girls. One faced the ground, the other on her back, her body draped over the first. Their limbs were stuffed. The girls rested on a flat stretch of earth, about 10 feet long, just before the land sloped downwards towards Devil Creek. Around them, there were no signs of struggle, no clothing, no personal belongings. It didn't take long for the officers to realize who they were. The search for Barbara and Patricia Grimes had ended. Joseph Grimes was brought to the scene. At the sight of his daughters, he collapsed, unable to complete the identification. Another family member stepped forward to formally confirm: Barbara Jean Grimes and Patricia Kathleen Grimes. The location stunned investigators. This wasn't Brighton Park. Far from it. The bodies had been moved miles from the girls' neighborhood, near the western edge of Cook County, well beyond the areas where search teams had been concentrating. Whoever had done this had chosen the spot with deliberate care. In fact, the place where the girls were found was roughly a mile from the park mentioned by Walter Kranz. A grim coincidence that only deepened the mystery. At the scene, police noted the injuries. Barbara's face and head were extremely bruised. Patricia had puncture-like marks on her chest, reminiscent of wounds made by a sharp instrument, such as an ice pick. There were no stab wounds, no gunshot wounds, no visible signs of strangulation. Both girls were completely nude, yet remarkably, their bodies were clean, preserved by the snow and freezing temperatures. Investigators believe they had laid there for several days, possibly longer, protected from the elements by the cold. The following day, 3 experienced forensic pathologists performed autopsies on Barbara and Patricia, each taking roughly 5 hours. The findings and the absences would haunt investigators for decades. Toxicology revealed no alcohol, no drugs, no poison. Stomach contents matched what they had eaten at home before leaving for the movies, suggesting that they had died within 5 hours of leaving their house on December 28th. Barbara showed evidence of sexual intercourse, but no signs of forcible assault. Examiners could not determine whether it had been consensual. Patricia showed no evidence of sexual activity. Bruises and puncture-like marks were attributed to animal activities after death, a conclusion that would spark heated debate. With no single fatal injury identified, the coroner made a difficult ruling. The official cause of death, murder, secondary shock due to exposure to cold temperatures. In plain terms, investigators believe Barbara and Patricia had been left alive long enough in freezing conditions for their body temperatures to drop below survival levels. Date of death, December 28 or 29. Disagreement erupted immediately. Some investigators believe the girls were killed shortly after leaving the theater. Others thought that they had been held for days, perhaps weeks, before being dumped along German Church Road. Coroner investigator Harry Gloss argued publicly that injuries indicated violence before death and likely sexual assault during captivity. He also pointed out environmental evidence suggested the bodies were warm when dumped, meaning death might have occurred later than December 29th. His statements shocked the public and cost him his job. By the time Barbara and Patricia were laid to rest, the investigation was already fractured. different investigators, different timelines, completing truths. The single undeniable fact remained. Two sisters had gone to the movies and were found dead nearly a month later, miles from home. What should have been a focused homicide case devolved into patchwork of conflicting theories, damaged evidence, and interagency disputes. From the start, the Chicago Police Department and Cook County Sheriff's Office disagreed on how and when the girls had died. One side believed the murder occurred the night of December 28th, narrowing the suspect pool to people in Brighton Park, near the theater and bus routes. The other theorized the girls had been held and transported before being killed, which would widen the investigation to multiple locations, possibly organized offenders, and premeditation. Instead of choosing a single theory and following evidence, investigators allowed both to coexist. Leads were pursued without direction. Witnesses were interviewed and re-interviewed, often with different questions from different agencies. Critical timelines were never firmly established. Among the earliest and most troubling leads was the dark-colored Mercury, seen near the girls the night they disappeared. Multiple witnesses described the vehicle. A partial license plate circulated internally. Hundreds of Mercury owners questioned. Nothing planned out. No vehicle was ever definitively linked to the girls, and no physical evidence connected a car to German Church Road. With the discovery of the bodies, the investigation shifted focus to finding a killer. The first and most obvious suspect was 53-year-old Walter Kranz, the man who had claimed to dream where the girls' bodies would be found. Police also suspected him of writing one of the ransom notes. Kranz insisted that his knowledge came solely from the psychic abilities. He was questioned multiple times, but with no evidence connecting him to the crime. Authorities were forced to release him. Next, attention turned to Edward Beanie Badwell, a young drifter from his 20s who worked part-time as a dishwasher. Benny's employer told police that on the morning of December 30th, he had entered the restaurant with another man and two girls resembling a Barbara and Patricia. One of the girls appeared unsteady on her feet. They sat at a table listening to the jukebox before leaving in the car. One of the girls told a waitress they were sisters, and a patron later corroborated the encounter. Benny was arrested and questioned for 3 days. Eventually, he confessed, claiming that he had a friend, Frank, had kept the girls for a week, taken them to bars, fed them hot dogs, and when the girls rejected their sexual advances, beaten them unconscious before dumping them along German Church Road on January the 13th. He was formally charged on January the 27th, but the confession quickly unraveled. At the hearing of January the 31st, Benny recanted, claiming police coercion and good cop, bad cop tactics forced him to admit to the crime. Forensic evidence contradicted his story. The girls' stomachs contained only the meal they had eaten at home, with no alcohol or hot dogs, and indicated they had died within 5 hours of leaving the movies on December the 28th. To make matters worse, recordings confirm Beanie was at work at the restaurant on January the 13th, the day he claimed the murders occurred. With the case against him collapsing, he was released on bond on February the 6th. Loretta Grimes was outraged by his claims, refusing to believe her daughter had been in saloons or bars. By March, all charges were dropped. A third suspect emerged, 17-year-old Max Flegg, a juvenile with a history of violence. He admitted in a separate case to assaulting women who resisted his sexual advances. Police persuaded him to take an unofficial polygraph, illegal for minors under Illinois law, but there was no physical evidence linking him to Barbara and Patricia, and he was released. The following year, he confessed to the beating death of 14-year-old Mary Lou Wagner. The investigation unraveled almost as quickly as it began. Evidence that might have made a difference was lost, ignored, or never collected. The girl's clothing was never found. The crime scene along German Church Road had been exposed to the public before it was secured. Witnesses were dismissed too quickly, and early tips were not always documented properly. Standards were considered basic today, simply didn't exist then. But even by the 1950s measures, mistakes were glaring. Pressure mounted, newspapers criticized the police, the Grimes family demanded answers. Politicians demanded results. Instead of slowing down and rebuilding the case carefully, investigators rushed. Statements were made prematurely. Theories were leaked. The momentum of the investigation faded. And by the end of 1957, there was no clear suspect, no agreed upon timeline, and no physical evidence strong enough to hold up in court. Leads trickled in, but the urgency had vanished. The case remained open officially, but functionally, it was stalled. Barbara and Patricia Grimes were no longer just missing. They were a cold case. When the crowds left, when the headlines stopped shouting, when the police cars no longer lined the streets of Brighton Park, Loretta Grimes was still there, still walking in a quiet house where two voices were missing, still setting place at the table out of habit, still listening for footsteps that would never come. She had lost more than her daughters. She had lost her sense of safety, her trust in the world, her belief that justice was guaranteed. The home once filled with laughter and noise became a place of mourning. Neighbors helped. The community raised money to cover funeral costs and keep the family afloat. But no amount of kindness could fill the void left by Barbara and Patricia. Loretta never stopped believing someone knew what had happened, and she never stopped waiting for that person to be found. Months after the investigation had stalled, the call came. A man's voice, calm, cruel, confident. He mocked the police, laughed at their failures, then he said something no one else could know. Something only someone who had seen the bodies could see. He mentioned Patricia's toes, crossed at the feet, small. A small, intimate detail never made public. The call ended with laughter. It could not be traced, and from that moment, Loretta knew the killer was still alive, still free, still watching. As years passed, Chicago changed. New crimes filled the front pages. New tragedies demanded attention. The Grimes sisters became fragments of memory. The Elvis girls, the one they had never solved. Police files were boxed up. Detectives retired. Witnesses moved away or died. Teenage girls' abandonment bodies, remote locations sparked quiet reviews of the Grimes case. But every time investigators returned to it, no suspect could be conclusively linked. No evidence survived intact. Similarities were unsettling, but similarity is not proof, and proof is what the case lacked. Joseph Grimes died in 1965. Loretta passed away in 1989. Neither lived to see justice. Neither ever learned who took their daughters. Their graves now lie near Barbara and Patricia's forenames, one unanswered theory. Decades later, independent researchers reopened the case files. They found missing documents, contradictions, lost opportunities, mistakes that could never be undone. DNA testing was discussed, but there was nothing to test, no clothing, no biological samples, nothing that modern scientists could touch. The past had erased its own fingerprints. And because unsolved cases are not just mysteries, they are warnings. They remind us of how easily lives can vanish, how silence can last a lifetime.
Before we end this case, it's important to pause, not to dwell on suspects or timeline, but on the girls themselves. Patricia Grimes was 12, just 3 days from her 13th birthday. She should have been planning a party. Barbara Grimes was 15, old enough to feel grown, young enough to still need her mother. She was supposed to walk her sister home, not vanish into the dark. They did everything right. They stayed together. They asked permission. They went somewhere familiar, and still they were taken. That's what makes this case terrifying. Not that something went wrong, but that nothing did. Somewhere between the glow of the movie screen and the walk home, someone saw them. Someone followed them. Someone made a choice, and that choice ended two lives and changed one family forever. Their mother spent the rest of her life waiting for answers, waiting for justice, waiting for a knock that never came. And even after Barbara and Patricia was laid to rest, the waiting never stopped. Before we close this chapter, remember them as sisters, as daughters, as girls who loved Elvis and a movie night. Not just as victims, because unsolved cases do not belong to the past. They belong to all of us. Until the truth comes out, this is a case of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. Now let's get into some theories.
Let's get into some theories. Let's get into some theories. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories. Let's begin detectives. What type of thoughts you thinking? What theories running through your mind? I'm thinking all types of suspicion. Uncover the truth, what we can find. Witness say they saw somebody creeping out the back door. What you think they did it for? That's so crazy, I'm not sure. They found a car, where could she be? Here go another puzzle piece. Research and do your history. It's plenty unsolved mysteries. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories, yeah. Let's get into some theories. Let's get into some theories. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories. Let's begin detectives.
You or me?
Go ahead.
So I'll have my suspects. Dun dun dun. First of all, I'm going to call him Mercury Car Dude because it's been 2 times that people said that they saw them going into that car. So I'm going to call him Mercury Car Dude. Next is a stranger. Then it is Walter. So Mercury Car Dude, I don't know who he is. It seems like everybody kept saying like the sisters got into this car with this dude. That he was young, 22 to 25. Even when Smile wrote the letter into the lady's show, they said that they got into this car. And I wonder who was those girls, because it seemed like young girls wrote that letter, because they said, me and Betty, we went and we saw them, we got their numbers, we talked, and then we went back home, but we forgot something, so we ran back. So it seemed like a bunch of teenage girls talk. So that's why I think the letter was a teenager writing. I don't know. It just seemed like that. A stranger, let's be honest, it just seemed like a stranger did it. At the end of the day, it seemed like somebody was watching those girls at the movie theaters, felt something evil towards them, and wanted to unalive them. And then Walters, because he knew where the body was, he wrote letters to the mom. So that's even more creepier. I wonder if she can, well, may she rest in peace. But I wonder if she heard Walter's voice in the man that was on the phone call. Because remember, it was a man that called her and knew things about what happened to her daughter that nobody else knew. So I wonder if she heard like similarities in their voices. I always wondered that when looking into this case. But it seemed like the police just effed this job up so bad. They had everything wrong. First of all, they couldn't figure out the date that they passed away. And which, looking back at that date of time, I can see that. Because they didn't have the technology we have now. And I know sometimes people say when they frozen to death, it's hard because of the temperature of the body will change. So that's another thought. I just think it's those 3. I'm more on Walters. I don't know. Something about that man. You knew where the body was. You say you had psychic abilities. Creepy. And then your writing style was the same as the letter that was sent to the mom. I don't know, they don't seem right. So out of my list, I'm going more for Walters, which he was 53 at the time. Was it 53 or 52 at the time? So we already know he passed away, so we never get that answer.
Yeah, I agree. I believe it's Walter because he's the one that had the most relevant story to what happened. He knew stuff people didn't really know.
Yeah, where the bodies were placed too. So like, how did you psychic ability? So I do believe people have psychic ability, but that you was too on point. I don't know.
This is a red flag.
Red-
What was his motive, though? I just want to understand.
And it seemed like the police did a f up job on that. So I wonder, like, when police came back, new police officers went and looked into this case, they said it was a lot of things that was missing. So I wonder, like, okay, what did they miss with Walters? You know, like, what was it? Because it could have solved the case. There was two on this other guy that was at work and all that stuff happened to him. Why was we stuck on him? This case, I'm stuck because it just seemed like the police just did a effed up job. So, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this, but seemed like you think this case out of all will be the best one because police officers in the community was working together. They were trying their hardest to find the killers. So you're like, okay, we will get the answers, but it just seemed like the police was way over their head to find out who unalived these girls. And it's so sad. And may they rest in peace. And I'm so sorry that their mother didn't get the answers before she passed away. And was basically harassed. That's the effed up part. Like, whoever did this, you messed up. Because you harassed a mother who lost 2 daughters. Like, you wrote ransoms. You wrote letters to her. You call and harass her. Like, dang. That's a psychopath. Well, guys, that's our case. And if you have any theories on this case, please tell us. We would love to hear you guys' theories. We are on all podcast platforms. We are on YouTube. We're on social media. So please come check us out. Don't forget, everybody's a suspect.
So proven innocent.
Bye.
Lesbian detective. Unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Right now. Lesbian detective. Lesbian detective. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready to go. Pay attention to the message I present to you, the lesbian detectives.